Widely considered to be one of the best ways to start out in the Commander format is getting a Commander Precon deck. These are complete Commander decks playable right out of the box without any additional cards needed. In this section of our guide to the Commander format, we're going to discuss the pros and cons of using a Commander Precon deck, and why you should consider this route if this format is something of interest to you. As stated in part 1, I will do my best to keep things simple for the sake of the newer players. But if you are watching this and are a more seasoned player of the format, do feel free to weigh in to help our newer friends. So a Commander Precon deck will provide you with a functional 100 card Commander deck with a specific theme. There are currently over 100 different Commander Precon decks available. Some of them are still in print, many are not, but are still able to be found with a little searching around. Perhaps the biggest benefit to purchasing a Commander deck as your start to the Commander format is the accessibility. You can go to your local game store or even a big box retailer like Target or Walmart and purchase a deck and you're ready to go. There's no further investment required beyond the initial purchase. These decks come ready to go right out of the box, and each has its own unique theme. These can range anywhere from a deck focusing on enchantments to a specific creature type or even a specific strategy. The card on the front of the box is often considered to be the face commander of that deck and is designed with the most amount of synergies with the remainder of the deck. This is usually and obviously a good card to pick as your commander. They put them on the box. But if you're not a fan of how that commander works but you still want to use the decks, these decks all come with at least one alternate legendary creature who could be swapped out to be that deck's commander. Some decks have multiple options, but every deck will contain at least one alternate commander. Do remember that if a deck contains a legendary creature who lacks any of the colors that the main commander has, it would not be an option to use as commander. 2-color legends do pop up in Precon lists every now and then, but they cannot be swapped out in a deck that has 3 or more colors. You can build a deck separately later on to use them as your commander, but that's a story for another video. After you've bought your first Commander Precon, you can then proceed to play it for a few times and familiarize yourself with the deck strategy. There's a paper insert included in these decks that will give you the backstory on the legendary creatures, as well as a bit of insight as to how the deck works. It does benefit you to read this. It'll help you understand how the deck will play. Once you become more comfortable with the deck and maybe have found that a few cards don't quite work out to your playstyle or the intended strategy of the deck, or you have a card that would work well in the deck that you want to include, then you can proceed to upgrading your deck. See, a Commander Precon deck is a great jumping off point to the format because it is, in some aspects, a blank canvas for you to personalize. It gives you all of the tools that you need to start playing, but you also retain the option of changing out cards that you don't like or cards that don't quite work as intended for cards that you want to include instead. See, Commander is an eternal format, and so just about every card ever printed is legal in this format. As long as a card is within the color identity of our Commander, you can include it in your deck. Commander Precon decks are great to tinker with, as their strategies have tons of support in Magic's vast back catalog of cards. Some veteran Commander players just to get a head start in building a new deck. I myself try to always keep one deck on hand at any given time that is largely a Precon list with a few upgrades. Now we will go over that upgrading process in a later video, but you can begin upgrading your deck to suit your specific playstyle and improve how your deck plays for you. After all, the Commander format is all about expressing yourself in your deck, in your card choices, in your commander choices, in your playstyle, and honestly that's one of the biggest pulls for the format. You will find that your playstyle in Commander can be vastly different from that of someone else, even if you're playing similar decks. And so certain cards that are included in your Precon deck might not play as you want them to, but they might play for someone else differently. By swapping them out, you are building your deck to fit your needs and your personality. Just remember that your deck always needs to contain exactly 100 cards. 2 cards which have become pillars of the Commander deck building process, Soul Ring and Command Tower, are included in every Commander Precon deck and are must-haves to your collection. These decks also contain plenty of lands that can help in your color fixing, which is a very big part in building an effective mana base. We will get into mana bases much later on, but in Commander, you will want to be able to produce the colors of mana that you need so that you can develop your board state. Now, the main downside to Commander Precon decks can be their availability and pricing. While the decks are still newer and in print, they may be readily available at your local game store or a big box store like Target or Walmart if you haven't got a local game store nearby. The more popular decks of a specific cycle may be a little trickier to find, as other Magic fans may have already bought them up. There are times that you'll find only 1 or 2 Commander decks of a cycle of 4 on the shelves, and this might be because maybe those decks are less popular, or they don't have the reprints that some Magic players are looking for. In the past, some Commander decks have grown to be wildly popular due to one deck having a really good card in it, or having a disproportionately strong strategy, or is just a popular strategy, and so those decks might fly off shelves. I don't want you to be discouraged if you want this deck, as they will get restocked, and they always can be found elsewhere if you are set on a specific Precon deck. I will suggest, if all else fails, to go to an online retailer such as TCG Player or Card Kingdom to help you find your Commander Precon. I've used these services for years, and while I am not sponsored by either of these two companies, I can say with confidence that they are both reliable and trustworthy websites to do your Magic business with. But I digress. After a while though, these decks do fall out of print, and so the copies that still remain can still be found rather easily online through those online TCG stores. Amazon does also carry some of these as well, though I would highly recommend looking through specialist stores first. The other problem with pricing is that once a deck has left its print cycle and is no longer available on shelves, the online price might increase for a number of reasons. Some of the older Commander decks can become a little pricey just out of scarcity, such as the original cycle of Commander decks from 2011. Some of these cost several $100s each. I do not recommend buying those decks at that price point at all, to be frank. Some decks contain sought-after cards, and so those get a price increase just because of those cards' popularity. Cards like Teferi's Protection and Fierce Guardianship are all powerful cards that were originally included exclusively in Commander Precon decks, and because of this, the decks that they came from carry a higher price point. If you truly are set on these decks and can find them at a reasonable price, then the investment might be worth it in the long run. Most of these decks did originally sell from between $30 to $40 US, so keep that in mind when you consider whatever price point they may be currently selling for. At the end of the day, it is your enjoyment of the format and playing a deck that you will enjoy that should absolutely outweigh any price point or influence of any chase card. Now, this is just one method of many to starting out in Commander. In our next section, we will discuss building a Commander deck from absolute scratch. This is something I would only advise approaching if you are familiar with Magic enough that you can approach deck building, as there is quite a bit more extensive work involved and, depending on your deck, an increase to the initial investment. I will help guide you through it, so while it might be daunting, it is something I believe you can tackle. For now, that will bring us to the end of this section of our guide. I hope you enjoyed this video. If there's any advice you may have for our friends who are looking to buy a Precon deck, feel free to talk about it in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, likes and shares are the best way to help us navigate the algorithm and be seen by those who can benefit from this information. If you're new, subscribing guarantees that you never miss an upload. I appreciate you taking the time out to spend with me today, and as always, I'll see you all next video.